All guests must be approved by Major.
I bought that for my husband.
It's funny. It's not too far off from the truth either. Like that. A lot of this is going to boil down to just your overall ability to control him and discipline him in the house. Yeah. And right now we just don't really have a very effective means of doing so. Or because he's so pushy in the house, we're not following through enough to get him to the place where he is at the facility where where he gets into that more compliant state of mind. Okay. You know what I mean? So like things like him dragging you back into the house, like all of that kind of stuff. Like I said, I don't care if he heels with you or anything like that. Like half the time in my yard, my dogs aren't heel. Tell him no.
No. That's actually been a new thing too. He'll get off his bed and lay in the corner instead.
Yep.
To be off the bed, like pushing the buttons,
yep.
You know? I'm like, we told you bed. What? That's not your bed.
Exactly. Yeah. And I can also tell he's a little inconsistent about how he's feeling this right now. So what I'm actually doing, like right there, I actually tapped that like maybe 4 or 5 times until I got a response out of him.
You tapped
the button. Yeah. So when you told him no, yeah, I tapped it, and then I saw he felt it, right? And then I stopped.
There's times where he...
Yeah, because he's definitely, I noticed that in the driveway.
Why is that?
It could be a contact point issue. It could be a little too loose. It could be a lot of things. I'm not sure. Okay. We'll take a look at that in a little bit, obviously. I don't want to, because he's a little bit more defensive right now, I don't want to go in and check it right now, obviously. Yeah. But it's probably just not making a good contact. So I want to make sure every correction I give, though, does count. You know what I mean? So that's why...
Here he does, like he'll be... Yeah. He will chase a kid all the way up the steps,
sure.
Into their room, barking like a lunatic, and I'm doing that, and he's not feeling it.
Yeah. So it's going to be 2 things, right? So it's going to be 1, obviously the corrections for this kind of stuff, dude, you got to get on your bed, right? He's not in a super jacked up state of mind or anything, but I am going to tap until I can tell he feels it, right? In the driveway, when we were correcting for the down, all that kind of stuff, same deal. I'm going to tap until he feels it, right? Another thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to start giving you an alternative means of being able to discipline him for some things, right? Which we'll get into in a minute here, obviously. But I just want to let him chill here. And you can tell he knows something's up. You can tell he's like kind of shaking on there and stuff. He's a little nervous and apprehensive, which, listen, I don't want to see him scared. That's not the goal here, obviously. But the fact that he realizes he's in a little bit more submissive of a state of mind because he realizes he doesn't have the control he's used to having in this house right now, that is, in my opinion, a little bit of a positive, though, still. Okay. So I'll take it. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. So we talked about having like alternative means of being able to correct him and stuff. So what I have here, this is called a bonker. Basically what this is a towel that I'm going to throw at him. Okay. So the idea behind this is this for a lot of dogs can be almost like 10 times more powerful than the e-collar to them because dogs have a very strong startle response, right? So what I'm going to do is before I start working these crate drills with him, I'm going to pre-give a correction. And what I'm going to try to do is essentially set the tone of coming into here. I don't even want you thinking about getting yourself into like a defensive state of mind with things, right? What that's going to do is charge up my no marker, make sure that he's getting a little bit more compliant and respectful state of mind here. Then I'll work the crate drills and we'll see what sort of difference that we get out of him. Crate. Good. Just let him hang out there for a second.
You're not like nervous about that?
No, so I just corrected him twice and you could tell he was definitely like, whoa, pretty taken aback from it. So and again, like I know it's not as intense at the facility usually, but like I have seen him do his antics in the crate before.
He did. Yeah, when he boarded with you guys.
So I've seen it before.
Right. And then you cured him.
Yeah, right.
For a while.
Temporarily.
Until I took him out that one crazy day.
Crate.
Would he be as protective of a crate at your place, though, than here.
He was. I mean, that first week or so that he was with us, like for the
Yeah.
board and train, like he was pretty bad in it.
Yeah.
So like we had a drag line in him in the crate at all times because like he wouldn't come out like unless and he would get very defensive like at the door and stuff. So we had a drag line that we kept on him in the crate, and we used one of those like little grabbers to grab the drag line to get him in and out of the crate.
Okay.
You know.
So that's kind of how you started.
Yeah.
With,
Okay.
I'm not as afraid of putting him in as I would be
Getting him out.
getting him out in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah. Crate.
I mean, I would love for him to be in our room again.
Sure.
You know.
I gotcha.
My husband's taking one for the team.
I get you. Okay.
That's amazing.
Down. Good. Let's let him chill here for a minute. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work a couple where I put him in, I close the door, we'll leave him there for a minute, and then I get him out. We'll see if that changes anything.
Okay.
Okay? Crate. Yep. So closing the door is different, obviously.
I do.
No.
Wow. It just, that's what I opened it to.
I understand.
Thinking he wasn't going to do anything.
Yep.
And he did.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm like afraid now.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha.
And that's basically what he did with you guys, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
At the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't you want to go?
We'll see. Don't jinx it yet.
What is he doing? He's not even looking.
He's conflicted. He doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, he reverted back to basically this like pre-programmed thing that he does. You know what I mean? It's interesting. Like these types of behaviors that we'll see out of dogs sometimes, they're learned behaviors. They know they're doing them, but over time, as they rehearse it so much, it becomes such a strong habit that it's like this like impulsive instinct they get. You know what I mean? So you could tell as soon as I closed that door, even though he was in this like respectful, chill state of mind, it's just like a switch flicked. It's like he wasn't even in control of the behavior. You know what I mean?
And that's kind of how I felt like when I let him out.
Sure.
He didn't even know. Like,
Yeah.
he was completely, and once I
Yeah.
flipped the thing over and he got scared and I jumped on the bed, it's like he was calm.
Sure.
Like he snapped out of it. It was like, what
Yeah.
happened? And I could walk right by him and there was no problem.
Yeah. I understand.
I know.
So now we'll see, obviously. No. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Great. Down. No. Down. Okay. Crate. Down. Good. Here, why don't you come back in here?
Okay.
Don't worry, I'm not going to let him get you. I just want you to kind of see what I'm doing.
Okay.
You could hang out on the bed or something
Yeah.
if you want.
Why, yeah.
Hang out behind Paige.
Paige invite you, but not me. I'm kidding. I'll just stay right here. Okay.
So here's the thing, right? So at this point, a lot of the growling, stuff like that he is, and notice like I'm touching it, he's getting a little bit more chill with that.
He is.
Right? Just because he's starting to realize I'm getting him in and out regardless. And that's really the key here. It's partially correcting for certain behaviors, partially trying to get him into a more compliant state of mind. I'm correcting him for not getting into the down before I get him out, obviously. And I'm correcting him if outside of the crate he gives me any sort of like weird looks or anything like that, obviously. But a lot of this is just showing him the behavior isn't working, right? We can correct behaviors all day long, but if we're not removing the reinforcement behind the behavior itself, which is he displays those antics and we go away, right? You're only gonna get so far with it. So what I'm doing here is I'm making sure that when I go to get him out of the crate, he's in the down, right? Okay. Releasing him out of the crate, obviously. Okay. Now, triple clarifying, this is not fixed, obviously,
Right.
Right?
Right.
But you see how this progresses once he realizes that the behavior is not working, right? And this is the hardest part about dealing with dogs like this, right? Is at some point, if you want to get past this, you've got to step up to the plate. And we got to figure out a way to do it safely, obviously, right? But you've got to step up to the plate and show him the behavior isn't going to work anymore, right? As long as he thinks that you're scared of him, and as long as he thinks that if he exhibits all of those types of behaviors, that he's going to get away with it, the behavior will never progress past that point, right? And so hardest part about doing like aggression rehabilitation work is like I can do all of the training in the world with a dog, you know what I mean? But it's up to the owner to then take the reins and show the dog they're in charge.
If I'm not going to reinforce it, then
It's not even just reinforce it, like it's an overall state of mind. And it's one of those things where like, it's a delicate conversation because like, I don't blame you at all for being scared. You know what I mean? Like
I'm still, my heart is
I understand,
racing.
right? I don't blame you at all for it. You know what I mean? Like it is scary, right? Like I get it, right? But if we're gonna get past it, that's the only way, right? He's got to realize that you're gonna be firm as shit on him over this kind of stuff. You're not gonna take absolutely any nonsense from him, right?
Well,
And when,
my husband, case in point, he doesn't.
and that's why he's good with your
He
husband.
has no problem with
You
it.
know what I mean? So it's one of those things where, and you could take some time before you start to like incorporate some of this kind of stuff, and we could consider like maybe even, you know, since your husband has a really good relationship with him, like listen, also another thing, we're kind of going in like 17 different directions here. Normally, right, I didn't necessarily think he was going to be as intense with it as he was with me,
I
even.
didn't either.
You know what I mean? Like, so not that I'm totally surprised by it, but I kind of thought he was going to be a little bit better with it because I know him a little bit.
A little bit more passive.
Yeah. So had I known he was going to be that intense with it, I probably would have even used a muzzle through the process, which is why I really took my time getting him in and out. And that is not like the quote unquote like safest way of doing it, right? I kind of assumed the like, I'm going to wait him out. I'm going to kind of get him to chill out a little bit more before I start getting him in and out, and put in place like my own little protocols for safety for myself, right? But if your husband can get a muzzle on him, you could do this behavior on muzzle, right? And expect he's going to throw a fit, but at least you're not going to get hurt. You know what I mean? And it allows you to be able to get the job done, get him in and out, and be really, really safe and be really safe about it, obviously, right? So in a nutshell, you have the getting him in the crate part of things, and you have the getting him out of the crate part of things. Now, again, at the facility, how we got past it is almost exactly like what I did here. We had the drag line on him at all times, meaning if your husband's letting him in and out, obviously, if he doesn't have an issue with it, I don't really care what he does, but he probably should have a drag line on in the crate, right? So two things here, right? You have the getting him into it part, which the process for that, I am going to have you guys make a bonker because this seems pretty effective with him.
Yeah, he actually...
I mean, he's scared of it, you can tell. Come on, bud. So the getting in part is, come on, bud. You walk him up to the crate. You tell him, crate. No. If he doesn't do it, you're going to use the bonker to correct for not getting in the crate. And the reason why, Major, crate, down. The reason why I want to use that as opposed to the e-collar is because the bonker, the way it works, because it works off of like a startle effect as opposed to like a pain effect, it suppresses arousal a little bit. You know what I mean? Which I don't want to create more arousal in association with this situation, obviously, right? So you bonk him, then you get him into it, right? Really straightforward. And that's kind of like setting your tone before you get him into the crate, right? Getting him out, obviously, because we can't really bonk him very effectively while he's in the crate, that's an e-collar process. So first thing we do is we give our down command, down, right? If he doesn't down, let's say if you were to do this the first time, right? He probably would be freaking out in there, right? If he doesn't do it, that's going to be a no 3-second hold on the continuous button, right? Down, right? If he still doesn't do it, no 3-second hold on the continuous button, down, right? And repeating that process until you get him all the way into the down position. From there, you would take your time making sure he holds the down while you kind of like open the crate a little bit, make sure he's not freaking out from it. Okay. Then you release him out. And obviously that drag line would be on him. Come on, bud. Down. That drag line would be on him, just looped outside of the crate so that you have something you can grab onto for immediate control. Overall, he's got to realize there's way more motivating of consequences for this behavior. So, yeah, this is the delicate conversation, right? Because, like, again, it's to some people that aren't in your position and don't really understand what it's like living with a dog like this, they're like, oh, that's so mean, or this, or that, and you're being so mean to him. It's like, well, it's that, or he gets put down. You know what I mean? Like,
I know. And if he bites people, then he's going to get reported.
Can't happen.
I'm not going to put him down. He bit me. I wasn't giving up.
I understand.
I wanted to take him out on Route 2 and leave him there, but I didn't. Because I do love him.
I know. But let's see if we could get a little more progress here. You know what I mean? Let's see if we can get things a little bit more under control.
Before starting to eat, like to a certain point before starting the e-collars?
Yeah, I mean, kind of, right? Okay. So, like, basically you have 2 avenues in which you can go about training a dog, right? So, like, you could basically...
I'm gonna put you on speaker real quick.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Okay, go for it.
Yep. Hey. So you kind of have 2 avenues in which you could train like any dog you're working with. You could basically teach everything like with motivation and obviously using a lot of reinforcement and kind of building their confidence through the process and stuff like that. And then basically later on implement like your aversives for proofing those commands, so like if we're working on these behaviors we've trained and reinforced and motivated for, X amount of weeks, and then they decide to blow me off because there's a squirrel or this or that, I could give a correction for that. And a lot of times you could do it with a lot less kind of like fallout, and they take it a little less personally, and you could kind of keep that drive up. Or you can go about the process of like essentially just training the dog, utilizing, teaching them to avoid the corrections. You know what I mean? Which is fine. You know, I mean, it's not that it's bad. It's not like you're gonna have a dog that has like their soul crushed or anything like that, like a lot of people will say, but it's just a little less fun for them, you know?
Okay.
So yeah, I with all of the dogs that I work with, I try to get as much motivation out of them as possible and try to get them through basically all of the teaching stages of everything, relying mostly on that before I go to add a lot of the corrections and aversives into things. You know, and some dogs do really good with that, and you know, other dogs, like I said, it's just too slow of a process getting their drive up. But in her case, because like it's not like she had no drive coming into it, right? It was pretty good. It's just a matter of like that competing with the outside distractions and stuff like that has taken her some time just to really get the engagement up and the focus on me and stuff. So
she looks like a fruit bat.
I know, you do look like a fruit bat. Very
This
cute.
is actually the calmest she has been having other people walk in the house that she's never met.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What does she usually do?
She'll act up at the cage and be like, "Rawr, rawr, rawr."
Really? Mm-hmm. What, do you know something's different about me?
She's like, I think you know me.
You're very cute. Okay, cool. So obviously we talked about she's having the reactivity towards things outside.
Yeah.
The redirecting issues, things like that.
We had a new thing happen as well.
You what?
We had a new thing happen.
Oh, nice. What happened?
It was in the backyard and I had her on the leash because I've been taking her out at bedtime because we have skunks.
Sure.
And my neighbor's mom said, Debbie, is that you? And because she couldn't get to the fence to react to her, she turned around and bit my arm twice.
Nice.
So, and like completely fast, I was so shocked.
Yeah.
I like yanked up on her and told her no. And she was like, oh, okay, sorry.
Did she like, you had her on the leash, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Did she like lunge to the end of the leash, then turn and do it? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Single lunge, turned and got me.
Man.
So she's never done
When was that?
Before. Just last week.
She like breaks skin when she does it?
No, that's
Okay.
the crazy thing. And I mean, granted, I've had sleeves on
Yeah.
when it's happened because it's been chilly out.
Sure.
And I don't feel like it's a I'm gonna fuck you up bite.
Yeah.
It's a I'm overstimulated in your
100%.
ear.
And that's usually what it is,
Right.
you know? Okay, I got you. All right, well.
But yeah, so she's like that at the fence. She only likes my neighbor Tony. If his fiance comes to the fence, if his mother-in-law comes to the fence, they can't even. She charges the fence. She stomps her feet.
And you put up that, the mesh?
Yes, because 2 doors down is a super reactive asshole Jack Russell, and she
gotcha.
doesn't even try and control him.
Yep.
So he causes problems for us as well.
Okay. All right. And I think I asked you, you said she's not currently muzzle trained?
She is not. So she has experience with muzzle at the vets.
Yes.
Because I insist that they muzzle her, and
Yeah,
my
sure.
friend Ashley, so I work at the vet
Yes.
that I take her to. And my friend Ashley says she's actually fine getting a muzzle on. She doesn't cause a big fuss about it. I just never really trained her to it because we haven't needed to in the house.
Yep. Now, real quick, before you go to do it, so obviously I know she has the reactivity issues and the redirecting issues, but what's her behavior been like with guests? Like, are you nervous that she's gonna like bite other people and stuff?
She has. So
Okay.
I will not let her out of her kennel without people that she does not know.
Okay.
So typically here, I don't have kids. It's me and my boyfriend.
Yep.
He's been with us for 2 years, and she is. I mean, that is his dog.
Sure.
Even though she's my dog.
I gotcha.
She attacked his friend coming in the house. Normally, she was an avoider.
Yep.
So no indication that she would have ever attacked somebody. I said to him, hey, Gino, just let her sniff you. Just continue walking. Don't try and pet her because she'll just go away.
Yep.
And my boyfriend was standing in here. I was out there because we use the back door to come in and out. She barked at him a couple times and then grabbed him, ripped his pants, bit his leg, got him 4 times. I got in the middle of them because I didn't want to get my hands on. She bit me like 2 or 3 times. And I'll give him credit. He was like, are you going to get her off me? And I was like, yeah, man.
I do remember you telling me that.
I got you.
Okay.
So that was the only time she's done that. But since then,
Sure.
I mean, I don't even trust her. But here's the crazy thing. She won't see people for 8-9 months, people that she knows, and they can come in. Mm-hmm. Like, she's like, oh, hey,
Sure.
whoever.
Yeah, you said people she's cool with that are like in her circle.
Strange. Yeah.
Okay. And you can tell she has a very strong flight response. Like when she gets nervous, she's like
same.
out of here.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I was so surprised that she started attacking people, because normally if I had people over, she would just put herself under my bed. Like, that is the safe space. I put it on risers so she can comfortably be under there, because thunderstorms, that's where you'll find her.
Yep. Yeah, a lot. It's interesting. Like dogs that have really strong flight responses, that we allow them to rehearse that flight response very frequently. Typically, we'll see if for whatever reason they don't feel like they can flee. You know, for whatever reason they're in a weird place or this or that, and they have such a strong response to get away, right? And we don't learn to control that. What happens is they can flip it to a really strong fight response.
Right.
So my goal is not to allow them to flee so intensely. I want to get that under control and make sure that when she's scared, because in a lot of cases we'll find if they go under the bed and they're trapped under there, like we've lost control at that point. Like if we need to get her out from under there or whatever, we might be able to a little bit, but usually it's not very efficient, you know?
Yeah.
So I want to make the scary things a little less scary by getting the attention from let me flee somewhere to like, Mom, what do I do, right? So that the fight response becomes a little bit less intense as well, right? That's kind of how all this comes together. And if she gets up, same deal, you'll just tell her no.
I just
Tell her
say
no.
No.
Now walk all the way back in. Tell her bed or place. Yeah.
Good.
You're gonna have to remind me of that every time.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Now, that correction right there, 83.
Really?
83,
Like,
right?
she's so friggin' like stoic and tough sometimes. And then other times I'll tap her on like 10 and she'll freak out.
Yeah. So
It startles me.
yeah, it's dogs are very hit or miss with it sometimes. But when I look at, you know, where I see most trainers do things wrong, right, is our teaching stages of everything, they do totally great, right? That's where we want to use low levels. We want to make sure the dog understands the tools. We want to make sure the dog understands the commands, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? But at this point, that's why I asked you, does she know place, right?
Yep.
She clearly knows place, right? When we're at that stage where we're proofing behaviors, if I'm finding myself needing to correct every single time I work these commands, I'm doing something wrong.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because she should just know them. Like at this point, when I ask my dogs to go on their beds, they go on their beds and they stay there, right? When I ask my dogs to down, they get in downs and they stay there.
Right.
Not because I correct them every time I ask the command, but they know the consequences for not doing them are motivating enough where it sticks through the next time I need to ask it.
Sound good.
Exactly, right? And that's the point we need to see her hit, which is why I tend to resort to initially much more motivating corrections for even stuff like this.
I can't see her.
You know, we're setting the tone right now before we even worry about what's going on outside, right? We're setting the tone for the expectation in the house as a whole, right? And that's the idea here, is we're not waiting and chasing symptoms of, I need to see her react so I can correct for it. Like, obviously, we're gonna have to correct for that at some point, but if I could set the tone of, this is your behavior in the house all the time, regardless, you know what I mean? Then when that actually happens, I gain myself so much leverage that she knows that's an unacceptable behavior, right? Because everything else she's ever done that's been more minor than that has been such a more intense thing, you know?
Yeah, that was like, I don't have a tail.
Some dogs, like you look at again, like you have to be able to identify who is the dog, like at their core, right? Like, so my one dog, my one pitty, she's a very insecure kind of just, similar temperament to her, I would say, right? Kind of like slow and like apprehensive and stuff like that. And that's who she is, right? Like nothing is gonna change that, right? So when I look at like this right now, I look at, this is just her baseline, right? It's not that she's scared or anything. That's just like her showing her real personality, right?
About it.
I think socializing your dog is extremely important. I think your dog having a social out is extremely important, but I think that 99.1% of the ways that people typically will try to socialize their dog are horrible.
Right.
You know?
Like dog parks bad.
Yeah. So but even like you get into, I know like I'm assuming you used to take her to work and stuff with you, you said. You know, like I'm not even that big of a fan of like environments like that, you know? I think sometimes less is more when it comes to socialization, and I try to really just make sure, like, okay, cool, let's have really small, really short, really positive interactions, you know? So, and a lot of that's going to be done in one-on-one play dates with other dogs. A lot of that is going to be done in, you know, one-on-one interactions with new people once we've gotten her to a place where she's comfortable coexisting with them, you know? And before we do any of that, though, we have to check the box if we have our dog under control around this stuff first. So yes, we're gonna need to do that, but we have to get her under control before we go to do that. Okay, so a couple things here. So one, this was all positive, right? Again, even though we didn't see the behavior, it shows that she has the ability to turn it off. And that's all I'm looking for is she conscious enough of her behavior where she could understand this probably isn't gonna work right now, you know? Which means that as long as she gets that same respect of you, she'll still show those same behaviors, right? One, she's not respecting you enough. You know, the way you were giving commands and stuff at the beginning was just too loose. You're relying too much on the food and stuff with her, you know? So I would work on kind of two individual things right now. One is inside of the house, literally the only thing I want you working on with her is your place command or your crate command. I would not close the door of the crate when you're working it because I want to see her keeping herself in it, and I would obviously work your place command as well. Much higher on your corrections when she breaks the command, obviously, and then put her back onto it, and then I would start simulating situations where you have people coming in and out of the house, right? Whoever it may be, right? Be safe about it. Luckily, you have that gate, so if somebody's coming in the front, you could work the crate in the back. If somebody's coming in the back, you can work the bed in the front, right? That also puts you in a position where you could correct the behavior really firmly from afar without worrying about her turning and redirecting at you, right? In the backyard, your come command needs to look much better. It looked great, but like you're saying, obviously it sounds like sometimes you let her kind of be a little loose with it.
And she'll meander. Like she does, she has no sense of urgency. Like she's like, I mean, I'm coming in your general direction and I'll get there.
I want to see that urgency. And listen, you don't need to practice 17,000 come commands, but when you do need to get her in, be prepared to make it count if she doesn't come. Quick
question.
Yeah.
If she's meandering, do I just break that off, no, correct it, and then
I don't care. She can meander, you know, but like what I'm saying is like,
if she's just not listening.
If I tell her come and she's meandering back there and like comes halfway, then sniffs, then comes, like yes, I would correct for that. Yeah. Also in the backyard, I don't want any more animal chasing. That's going to be just 100 correction. No, boom.
Just right
Nip
when she's
that
like,
in the butt.
I'm like, no.
Yeah, the second she makes forward motion towards the animal. Right? She can look, get stiff, but if she goes from that to this, that's where we give the correction right there. Right?
And then what do I do after that correction?
Nothing.
Like
if we're just giving a correction for a behavior, there is zero expectation aside from don't do that thing. You can do literally whatever you want to do after that point. Yes. Those are the three things I would start working immediately, right? Much more firm with her on this stuff. I would not use your food when you're doing those drills for right now, just because I want to make sure she's just doing it. I want to see where she's at after about a week of doing that.
And then what do I do with like the front window situation? Do I try and like...
I would start trying to simulate in those situations, right? If you start noticing she's getting amped, you give that place command. If she doesn't respond right away, no, boom, big correction for that. Get her back onto the place, right? Or if you want to use the crate because it's easier, that's fine also. But ultimately, we're going to want to just correct that behavior, but I want to try to set it up as many times in situations that are more controlled before we go to address that like full bore, you know? Because you got to get a little leverage with some of the other stuff.
Right. So I guess my question is just for the next week, kind of keep doing what I'm doing, maybe not as much access to the front window during the day.
Yeah.
In the evenings with me, fine, we'll work that.
Yeah.
And like...
Yes. Yeah. Because I don't want to put too much on your plate at once right now, you know? Like, yeah, like listen, if I were living here with her, I would just start correcting that like full bore right off the rip, obviously.
You can't board and train with us? I have a spare bedroom.
My last client asked me that as well.
Stay for a week?
Yeah. So no. But you know, typically I would start addressing all this kind of stuff, but like it's just going to be too much if you start trying to do it all at once, right? But try to, we're working on the drills with the bed command and the crate command with people coming in and out of the house to get yourself used to the routine of what you're going to be doing in these real life situations. You know what I mean? So yes, if you're like prepared, right, and you could apply that right then and there, okay, she looks like she's getting aroused or somebody's walking by the house, let me preemptively place, right? Big correction if she doesn't do it. That would be very positive. If you're not in a position to do it, just manage it however you need to. So you said they got in one fight with each other.
Correct.
And I believe when we spoke on the phone, you kind of separated them, and then we had talked about just kind of getting them slowly back together in the same room
Correct.
and stuff. And obviously, they're together again.
Yep.
So how did that progression happen for you?
Great. So what we did was we actually were doing some of the things already, because when I contacted you, it had been like multiple days
Yep.
since they got in that fight. But we had them each on leashes, like on separate couches
Sure.
with each family member. And just like slowly had them like sniff each other more and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And then we felt more comfortable to take at least Olive off the leash because she's super obedient. And then eventually we just did the same with Jovi.
Yep.
And they seem great. I mean, they're doing a lot better. I just would love to have some
Can
guidance.
you remind me what happened again? The
Sure.
fight?
Yes. So my son, who is a senior, so like there's like a few 18-year-olds over. They were all
So how many people live in the house?
4.
4. Okay. 2 kids and you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
sophomore, senior, and then us too. So there were some girls sitting on the floor in the family room, and they were excited about like meeting the new dog. And Olive, our dog, was sitting near one of the girls.
Sure.
And Jovi came over to see one of the girls, and Olive like kind of like went out after her, and then Jovi just like fully retaliated, and like she had like a puncture.
So she kind of guarded the girl,
Yes,
and then
yes.
she just kind of took that as we're fighting now.
100%.
I gotcha.
And Olive like wouldn't even come down the stairs.
Yeah.
You know, like we had to make her do that. She was
Sure.
so scared. She's never had anything like that, and she's, you know, so.
I gotcha. Okay. Well, the positive, not that it's a positive, obviously, but the positive of that scenario is we could look at that scenario and we could understand exactly why it happened, right? Guarding with people, high arousal, stuff like that, is like recipe for disaster, especially when you have 2 dogs that don't have much of a relationship with each other to begin with, right?
Sure.
Like, I equate, and what, she had been in the house just a couple days at that point, right?
Like a couple hours.
Oh, a couple hours. Oh,
yeah.
geez.
I know. It was bad.
Yeah.
I fully will take all
Listen,
responsibility. for how bad
it's
this is.
again, it's not even most people don't know how to properly do this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So like, it's not like I blame this on you by any means, right? But I look at you're introducing 2 new dogs with each other, and for the first, let's say even like couple weeks, typically speaking, when we're introducing 2 new dogs with each other, I completely eliminate basically any points of contention that there may be, and typically what those are food, toys, and affection.
Right.
Right? Those are the big 3 resources that if dogs are going to fight over something, 9 out of 10 times it's going to be over one of those 3 things,
Got it.
right? So in order to successfully implement those things into a household with multiple dogs, I have to make sure that the dogs have established we refer to as like their social hierarchy with each other first, right? Without any of those things to confuse everything, right? So basically what they're doing right now I see there's some toys out over there, stuff like that. Technically speaking here, since we're still in kind of like the honeymoon stages of like these dogs getting their relationship with each other, I probably wouldn't even have that stuff out at this point.
Okay.
And I don't know, what's their interaction with the toys been? Are they very into them?
Only Jovi plays with them right now. She doesn't really know how to. It's kind of like awkward to watch her. She like picks it up and
Yeah,
she
she's like,
drops it.
what do I do with this?
Yeah. And Olive, so that's the difference where Olive would go get a toy and play with us, or she'd go get a bone and chew it. And in the evenings, like she's almost like an only child, like knows how to like self-play.
Sure.
And she hasn't done any of that since Jovi's been here, so that's where I feel like her life.
Don't overthink that.
Is being-
Yeah. Don't overthink that. There's, like you were saying, like the transition from 1 dog to 2 dogs is very different because you start realizing some of the places where, when we have 2 dogs, the things we're used to doing with the one, there's certain things you just can't continue to do. You know what I mean? And listen, you could play with them and stuff like that, but when you look at like interactive toys, like a ball, a tug, things like that, chasing something, things like that, those are typically what we refer to as like antisocial dog behaviors, right? Meaning, yes, they'll interact with me doing that, but it's very difficult for 2 dogs to play fetch with each other, or 2 dogs to play tug with a human with each other. other. Like sometimes they'll tug with each other,
Right.
but for the most part, if I'm playing that game with one of my dogs, I can't really do it with my other one present as well, right? Unless I have really, really great control over things. Like at this point, I could do those things with my dogs, but that's because my dogs are so well trained at this point that if I'm playing tug with this dog and the other is like, oh, I want to do that and wants to come over and butt in, I can make sure that dog doesn't do that. Right, or vice versa, right? Or if I'm throwing a ball with them, like at this point, I can play. We play with the chuck, like where we chuck the ball, they go chase after it, this, that. I can do that with all my dogs at this point because I've spent a lot of time creating routines where whichever dog is about to get it, I could get all the others to heed to that dog while they get that ball, so it doesn't create a fight.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because you figure
Makes sense.
if I just have two dogs that are really into a ball and I just throw that thing and they both go for it,
Attack each other.
of course, you know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe not attack each other, right? But it's going to cause a little squabble. And if they don't have that social hierarchy established with each other, what's going to happen is it is going to turn into this big point of contention and conflict that will then turn into a fight.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure. Okay.
So the good thing is, like, I try to look at, like, when I meet dogs that are getting into fights with each other, I look at, like, baseline, what's their relationship with each other. Baseline, we don't have any toys they're playing with. We're not giving affection to any of them, right? And there's no food out right now. This looks really great.
It does.
This is what I want them to, you know what I mean? Like if you were to come into my house, like after the initial excitement of like, oh, there's somebody here, this is what my dogs do, right? I got 4 of them, one's over there, one's over there, one's over there, one's over there, you know? And, you know, they've all been together for a long time at this point, and like, yeah, like some of them have like their individual relationships with each other where like one likes this one a little bit more, one likes this one a little bit more, et cetera, et cetera. But for the most part, they're just kind of neutral with each other, you know? Like they don't have to be playing all the time. They don't have to love each other all the time. They're just like existing. Like they're part of my pack, right? We're in this house and this is cool, right?
And I would say when they have something to do, like when we walk them together or when they're barking like at the mailman or at a squirrel or something, they're like right next to each other barking at something and they're not competing.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Those get into then outside factors. So this is baseline, right? There's no outside triggers that are influencing their behavior right now, right? This is what I look at when I look at this. I look at this is what I'm striving for pretty much all the time.
Okay.
Right? You know, if we're playing and doing things like that, like we get into that, you know, how do we play with them together, this, that, right? That's different, right? Like we could have more energy and stuff like that, and they can go enjoy each other in the yard and stuff like that. But then I look at outside factors and how do I make sure then, knowing that the outside factors are the problem, like I could tell these two dogs don't have a problem with each other. Right? I'm not seeing a dog that's scared of the other dog or anything like that here. I think that you're probably putting a little bit of the human emotion at play. Only because, like you were saying, you're used to seeing the things you would do with her as a single dog, right? And you're looking at like, oh, well, she can't do those things because the other dog is present, right? So, but anyways, so I kind of have general rules in multi-dog household management that I look at as far as, you know, how I give those resources, those outside variables we talk about that create competition. So we were talking about the incident that you guys had. It's unfortunate it happened, but we could look at that situation. We can understand exactly why that happened, right? They just met each other. They haven't established a relationship with each other at that point. And you have a dog that's used to being an only dog, right? So she's not used to needing to share affection with another dog at that point, right? And you have outside people that don't live in the house obviously coming in. That creates even more excitement and more arousal with things, which creates a problem, right? And unfortunately, then you get to the other side of things. Obviously, she has a little bit of pity in her or something. You could probably tell, right? And not that I think pitties are bad dogs by any means. I have 2 of them myself, right? But there is something too, like when they fight, it's a little bit more intense usually.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's something to be aware of. Like my 2 are very social, but I don't even know if I told you this over the phone, but like when they first met each other, the one was my wife's dog, the other was my dog. And in the first like couple months of us dating each other, I was out of town, she was watching the 2 dogs, and they got in a horrendous dog fight with each other, like full on like knockout, drag out, like emergency vet visits, blood everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
Dog fight with each other. It was brutal, right? And I wasn't even there, you know? So
Able to break it up, or did
she had a friend over at the time, so that's the only reason they were able to break them up, you know? So it was scary for sure, and they're both bigger than them as well.
Okay.
So all of that to be said, we were able to look at that situation and understand why it happened. Same deal. There was a friend over, right? There was outside variables. The dogs hadn't developed a relationship with each other because we weren't living together at that point, right? And she kind of did certain steps a little bit incorrectly, which led to that arousal and that fight.
Yeah.
And we slow introduced them back together, just like you guys did, obviously.
Yeah.
And they haven't had a problem with each other since.
Yeah.
They've been totally fine, and it's been years now at this point that they've been together with each other. So I say that as like a positive of, yes, it sucks that they got in a fight with each other, but it's not the end of the world. To dogs, like after fights happen, it's kind of just like, all right, well, that happened and we're past it, To humans, we hold that emotion and it's like, oh my God, I'm so scared that it's going to happen again,
Yeah.
So all we can do as humans, obviously, is look at the situation, just make sure we prevent it moving forward as they develop that relationship with each other, right? So all of that to say, so everything looks pretty good so far here. I want to make sure that you guys are aware of how to add those resources in and how to make sure outside variables don't create a problem, right? So we were talking about food, toys, affection. Those are the big 3 things that are going to create fights. So how do I control those things? Right now, they're still I was telling her, kind of like the honeymoon stages of developing their relationship with each other. So right now, I basically take all of them and just kind of push them to the side for a couple of weeks, So it doesn't look like they play with the toys very often, but I probably, to be safe about it, maybe would put them away and take them out for like an hour or 2 at a time, let them interact with them, stuff like that. And then with toys, my big thing is when I add them in, I make sure that nobody's stealing toys from each other or anything like that. That's a big place that we'll see problems happen, is if she's playing with a toy and she wants to come over and try to take it, that's going to create conflict, or vice versa. So I want to be in a position where I could step in and intervene if I see that happen. And if you do designate like times where it's like, okay, here's an hour where you guys both get to have a toy kind of thing, you could make sure you supervise that and make sure that it doesn't turn into a problem, right? Food, what's your feeding routine with them right now?
I feed Olive here and I feed Joey there.
No problems with it?
No.
Do they eat all their food when you put it down and then it goes
Olive
away?
doesn't always eat all of her food.
Yeah, we started giving her a little bit of dog food, so she will, and it's great. And I can put my hand in Joey's bowl while she's eating, and she's like super fine with that.
Cool.
Joey will always come and lick Olive's bowl when she's done. Stop that.
Stop that right away.
Got it.
Yeah. So again, same concept. It's not a problem right now, but that's one of the biggest places that we'll see people call me that they're like, oh, I've had this dog for a year or 2 years, and every day when we feed them, they're fine, and then when they're done, comes over and licks the bowl and this and that, and then boom, dog fight happens one day, So multi-dog household management, I look at, again, like proactively preventing things from happening moving forward. Feeding time, this is your bowl, this is your bowl. Once you're done with yours, your bowl goes away. Once you're done with yours, your bowl goes away. Yeah.
Okay, how do you feel about them both drinking out of the same water bowl?
Water's fine. Yeah, water rarely ever creates a problem, So water, I don't care about. You
Because they both drink out of both.
Yeah, that's fine.
throughout the day. Okay.
Water, I don't care about. It's mostly just food.
Okay. So to pick the bowls up. Okay.
Yeah, pick the bowls up once they're done. And same deal, as you're watching it, good thing one's here. So you could watch it. She starts trying to go over and go for that bowl. No. Keep her in this area. Keep them in this area until they're finished with it. Do you do a lot of treats and stuff with them?
Not really a ton.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Some people get real crazy with treats, man. I mean, listen, it's not wrong to give your dog treats, but like, I don't see a need for it. I don't know, my dogs love their dog food, so if I need to reward them for something, like here's a little handful of kibble, It's healthier for them. I don't have to spend a bunch of money on treats and stuff, so it makes it significantly easier.
Really to get her in her crate.
In her crate, yeah.
That's fine. Like I said, I don't have a problem with if you're doing it. There are definitely places, there's a time and a place for it. Like my mom bought her dogs like Easter treats like the other day. And it's like,
right.
I know. So same deal. Like I've been using them when they go in their crates. Like here's one, But if you are going to give them, same concept. One treat for you, make sure there's separation with it, make sure nobody's competing for the other one kind of thing, right? And then the biggest one, obviously affection, the way you're sharing affection and stuff like that. It's not that you can't pet 2 dogs at once, but I try to set a general rule that I don't let attention stealing happen, right? I always say it's my job to set those boundaries. So for example, I know she was having the little bit of like guarding of the person. Yeah. So that's something where if somebody else is interacting with her, you'll have to be aware of it, obviously. Yeah. But let's say I'm petting her and I'm hanging out here. Hello. I know, belly rubs, yeah. And let's say she were to start trying to come over because she's like, oh, she's getting affection.
Almost every single time.
Yeah. I would set a boundary with that, and I would tell her I would make her stop, right?
Okay.
And vice versa. Come here. Are you nervous? Sure is.
She's a little bit more nervous with men
With
than
men, yeah.
That's okay. Yeah. And I'm not going to push it, obviously. My general rule for interacting with dogs, and this is something else to be aware of if you do notice that she is weird with men, is don't let people go invade into her space.
Okay.
Right? I set a general rule where I call the dog to me, right? If they come to me, I'll interact with them. If they don't, that's fine. Right? She doesn't want it right now.
Yeah.
If you push it at that point, that's where you get into, like, you kind of back them into a corner a little bit.
For
You'll
sure.
see more territorial behaviors and stuff.
What do you think, baby girl?
So as far as those types of things, that's obviously one side of things, is what's happening inside of the house, how you're administering those resources and stuff. The other thing then would be, as she gets more comfortable in particular, if you start noticing a lot of reactivity out the window or barking at neighbors or this or
Just
that.
started with her.
Yes.
She didn't bark for the first, I don't know.
That's something you'll want to try to get a handle on right away.
Yeah.
We want to make sure, obviously, we're preventing those things from happening moving forward. And you got a couple different ways you could do that. Honestly, given that she seems a little kind of sensitive and stuff, you may be able to get away with something as simple as there's something called a pet corrector, which is like a little can of compressed air. And basically you use it to interrupt behavior. So let's say she was barking out the window right there. Let's say I had my pet corrector right here. I could tell her no, right? Grab that pet corrector, walk over, give a little spray with it, and that typically will startle them out of that behavior and get them to stop doing that,
Okay.
right? So again, barking out the window together, I know you said they would kind of do it and there wasn't a problem. As that behavior intensifies, as she gets away with rehearsing it for longer and longer periods of time, what you'll start to see in some cases, what we refer to as like redirected aggression, which is not like, I want to attack her. It's simply, I'm frustrated. There's something out there I want to get to, so I'm just going to kind of turn and grab whatever's closest to me.
Yeah.
You know? And we just want to make sure we don't see any of that kind of stuff. So that would be the other variable you would want to look at, is setting some boundaries in the house to make sure that there's some sort of like kind of discipline for stuff. Other questions on those things?
I think we're in a really good place.
Yeah.
I think so as well.
Like we're not doing some things right for sure. But now that
It's just a couple tweaks, you know, it's the going from one dog to two dog tweak, which is very normal that we see a lot of people have to make. So I think you guys are,
From one kid to two kids.
except you can't communicate as easily with them.
That's right.
Yeah.
that's for sure.
So yeah, no, I think you guys are in a good spot right now. I think what we should do is you should roll with some of those things we talked about here, and what we'll do is we could do a follow-up, obviously, since we're doing just kind of like a half session here now. We'll do like a follow-up in a couple weeks and just see how things are going and see if there's anything else we need to adjust or anything like that. Just make sure you guys are on the right track. But just be, don't be scared, but be hyper aware of stuff.
Yeah.
And just make sure you really factor in all of those places outside of this where there might be some outside variables that could create some contention, just until they get a little bit better of a relationship with each other.
He was always fine. They always watched. No one has ever crossed. Zeus was invisible fence trained and it really went along the property. Patch I never did because he likes to run, so I'd let him run through the yard.
Sure.
But like I said, I feel like since he had that experience,
Yeah.
he's been heightened with the kids outside playing. And I just don't want him to have that bad feeling and possibly do that again.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, understood. I mean, really what it's going to come down to is proactively just ensuring it doesn't happen. I mean, we need to get him in that situation repeatedly where, one, if he does go to do it, we're prepared to catch it every single time so he can't get all the way over there, right?
But I'm just worried too to the fact like someday is 100 not enough.
Yeah, I mean, the idea though with it is that we don't have to correct it every time. The idea is we catch it a couple of times, we correct for it, and then ultimately the behavior goes away, right? I look at it the same as like, I was talking earlier with a client about like deer with my dog, right? They loved to chase deer, right? And when I lived in Lyndhurst, we had deer everywhere, right? And I had to correct them a bunch of times when I first moved there. Every time they'd see a deer, they'd go try to run after it in the backyard. I'd correct them for it. They'd run after it. I'd correct them for it. And after a while, they just stopped trying to run at them. They just realized, well, like,
Right.
I can't chase deer, right? Every time I go to chase deer, I get corrected for it. And the only reason why I was able to be successful with that with them is because I was 100% consistent about catching it, you know? Because dog, I mean, it's like anything else. Let's take something stupid like counter surfing, right? If our dog gets away with it half of the time, right, and half of the time they get corrected for it, because they're opportunists and because there is a reinforcement to them doing the behavior, right, getting something off the counter or whatever it may be, they're going to continue to try to do it. Does that make sense?
Yep. Right.
Let me see your remote real quick. Yeah, but there's a difference. Listen, I'm team don't micromanage your dog, obviously, right? But I'm team doing that in situations when I'm actually socializing my dog, right? If I'm actually socializing him, I have him in a place where he's interacting with new people, he's interacting with new dogs, stuff like that. I 100% do not want to micromanage that because he has to learn those mechanisms of socializing, right? We're in a situation where we're not socializing. Like right now, we're not socializing. Like we can call this socialization because he's getting the environmental socialization, he's getting around a new person, this and that, but it is not the time for interactions and stuff. So that's where I'm not micromanaging, I'm just directing at that point, right? So I'm giving him something else to focus on until I'm ready to socialize. Does that make sense, right? So even stuff as simple as like when you brought him out, why I had you tell him down in that situation is because you said, you know, he's going to come out and because he has a history of being quirky with people, he might be a little bit weird with you kind of thing. It's like, well, we're not socializing yet here, so tell him no.
No. Sit.
There you go. So, losing my train of thought here. So instead of bringing him out and seeing what he does, you know, seeing is he, you know, see who is this, what's going on over here, huff, puff, this, that, I'm going to immediately just bring him out and just be like, Patch, don't even worry about what they're doing right now, right? Just focus on this. Right? And the fact that we're struggling to get him to even hold a position right now means that that's where our emphasis needs to start. Right? We need to start with we're not even socializing yet. I'm making these decisions for you. I'm telling you when I come outside, when there's new people here, I'm telling you don't worry about them. I'm telling you when we're in the backyard right now and the kids are playing over there, I'm telling you don't worry about them, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, no, he's doing fine. I think a lot of times what we'll find is that, you know, at the beginning, how I was having you enforce those sits and stuff, we find that it kind of sets the tone of everything, you know, and then they wind up kind of being like on their P's and Q's. Which is the importance of all of this just in like real life. Like in real life, I want to be that strict about stuff, you know? Forget the big distractions, forget the problematic areas, right? If you walk outside and you're having a conversation with your neighbor and it's not even a big deal, right? We want to make sure if we ask him to do something, he's going to be compliant to that. He's going to be more focused on us than the other thing. Because when you brought him out, he was more focused on the other stuff and not enough on you, right? Come.
And that's like what he does to the foster dog now.
What's
like,
that?
He's cool with her like over the gate and stuff, but when I bring her out, he won't even give her eye contact.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah. See, he's like, he won't even look at her. See that?
Yeah.
So is that just...
Yeah, I mean, he's showing avoidance. He's like, I don't know what to do with myself, so I'm just gonna do something else, you know? Which I don't have a problem with. Like, again, like going back to before, like, it's not like I want to see him, like, scared of the other dogs. That's not the goal by any means. But he's trying to tell me that he's a little uncomfortable with this situation right now, which is okay. You know, I'm not gonna remove him from the situation because he's got to get, you know, a little bit more tolerance of it, obviously. But I'm not gonna push it, you know? He's telling me I'm not ready for an interaction or anything like that, which, again, is okay. So, how are you? Good.
This is Brandon. So how do I make him better to get him to...
More exposure, right? Yeah, I mean, so like he needs to be in more situations like this where he's behaving himself and he's a little stressed and he starts to realize nothing bad is happening, right? You tell, it's just like the kids are over there and the dog's there, you know, this and that, right? New person over there with a weird thing in her hand, like, so it's just more exposure to this kind of stuff. You know, like my dogs, you know, we're a little quirky with different things also, and by taking them new places and giving them, like we talked about at the beginning, giving them direction in these new places, it helped them to get past it and start realizing when they get stressed, they can look to me for that guidance more than need to handle it on their own, right? So like I said, it's not about like micromanaging or anything, but you have to give better guidance. The way that, you know, you said some people are telling you try to micromanage him sometimes. The problem is your micromanaging wasn't very effective, right? Because it wasn't getting the attention onto you, right? So you just weren't communicating clearly enough with him. And really, I think a lot of times too, like what I'll find owners do too much of is they'll have a stressed dog, or they'll have a genetically nervous or stressed dog, right? And the dog then starts exhibiting extremely inappropriate behaviors, right? Running next door and chasing the dog down, reactivity on the walk, growling when people come in the house, whatever, any number of different types of behaviors, right? And then they'll blame it on the stress. They'll be like, the stress is the problem. I have to make him less stressed, right? First and foremost, we need to eliminate those dangerous behaviors, right? We need to give better direction so he doesn't do those things in the first place, you know? And then after that, we'll find that the stress will naturally come down a little bit on its own. And then at that point, once he's doing well with everything, if we could say, there's really not a problem, right? He doesn't chase dogs, right, or children, right? He doesn't react on the walks. He holds his commands when people come over the house, this and that, but he's a little bit stressed. Then we can come up with a solution for that as we need to, but we got to get all of that under control first, you know? His little tail just like going. He's like, I don't know what's happening. Now, one last point on all this kind of stuff here. So notice how originally when we took him out and you were having him in that sit position, he was really unsure about everything going on around him, right? So he was holding the sit, but his attention was like this, right? That attention is shifted now where like even walking around and stuff, like he checks in with me, you know? But he goes back to you every time still, right? And obviously I'm directly behind him, which is hard right now, but he's checking back in with you, right? That's what I want to start to see with this kind of stuff, is you're saying, how does he get more comfortable with these things? He gets more comfortable with these things as they happen, and he realizes he needs to continue staying focused on you, right? He knows there is an expectation you are holding him to right now. He's got to mind his business, obviously. Now, with the socialization, it always has to come after the control side of things, though, right? So if I have a dog that's nervous around new people or nervous around men or this or that, this is why we always say when you have somebody new come over the house, or frankly, when you have anybody come over the house, you make sure they can do a bed stay first, right? We establish complete control around the person and get them to a place where, like we had him there in that sit position, he was no longer super concerned about what I was doing, right? His attention was more on you than it was on me at that point, right? So we checked the box that he was respectful of you, he was respectful of the new person, me in this case, obviously, so that when we go to release him, he's going to be already in a much more compliant state of mind, right? A lot of people skip that step, and that's why it goes bad, right? Is because they start off like he did out there, where we're putting him right into the situation and he's needing to decide if the person is okay or not, as opposed to us telling him if the person is okay or not, you know? Good. Yeah, I mean, so,
You know what I'm saying?
So for you, the hard part about your situation versus other situations is it's like a rotating group of dogs. It's not like there's one other dog in the house that's always there forever and ever, and we need him to get along with that dog, right? That's a different situation. So anytime you bring the Fosters into this house, like we talked about over the phone last week or whatever it was, you have to be very aware of that's an unnatural situation for Patch, right? Patch, this is his house, right? Yes, it's your house, but this is his domain. And having a new dog come into that domain all the time and suddenly just be like living with him before they have like a relationship developed with each other and stuff like that can be very complicated, especially when you factor in some of the outside variables that create contention, like toys, food, affection giving, furniture access, spots in the house they may get territorial over, et cetera, right? So anytime you're bringing those new dogs into the house, you need to make sure that all four of those things that I just outlined, food, toys, affection, and then like particularly like furniture access, you have to kind of like nix all together until they develop a relationship with each other, right? You remember anytime we've ever done social stuff with the dogs, you know, where it's always been okay, cool, we're in basically an open space right now, and that open space can just be your house, obviously, but there's nothing aside from me supervising these two dogs interacting, Right? Because we don't want to add things that are going to create a problem. The more I add in his favorite toy that may be laying on the ground and his food dish over in the corner in the kitchen that's there all the time, right?
Yeah.
And me going on the couch and him wanting to come up and cuddle with me like he normally does. The more I add all of those things, the more I increase the chances of some sort of problem happening.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
That's what I've always done too, you know?
yeah, sure.
But I feel like, you know, I say Patch has to be one of those socialized puppies, at least with other dogs, because at the one time I think I had 6 dogs here
Yeah, sure.
for a long period of time, but as he's matured,
Yeah.
especially towards other males,
Yeah.
I see problems.
Sure.
So, like, how do you, is that like a ranking thing?
It can't, I mean, listen, like Vinny, as he's gotten older, has gotten more crotchety with other dogs, you know? And it's not that he's aggressive by any means, but like I use the example, I talked about it probably 3 times today with people. With our new puppy, Vinny was like pissed that there was this new puppy in the house for the first like 2 or 3 months, you know? Like anytime the puppy would come near him, Vinny's growling at the puppy. If the puppy would try to like go push him, he'd like snap at him and stuff, you know? And that's again, you get into like, we as dog trainers, I think, you know, like we're hired to try to like fix all of these problems, and there's a lot we can do and a lot of educating we can do to help people and stuff, but in the end of the day, you're not going to change who a dog is.
See, that's...
You know what I mean?
That's like who it's become.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yes. I say that gingerly because the other side of it is like, you know, I'm also not going to say, well, he's just an aggressive dog and he can't be with other dogs. That's not the case. That just may mean he needs something different to help him overcome those social hurdles each time he interacts with a new dog.
Right.
In Vinny's case, right? I know when I socialize him with new dogs, I need to do it in a particular way in order to allow him to safely develop a good relationship with that dog.
Okay.
Right? If I take Vinny to the facility and there's another pushy male, I know that when I'm I'm not going to not socialize him with them, right? But I know if I do that, I got to keep a little extra of an eye on it to be prepared to intervene and step in if I need to.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So we don't stop doing the socialization, and we don't really change that much about what we do, aside from one, maybe give it a little longer before we hit that point where we're like, things are good, you know? And 2, be much more aware of their interactions with each other as they're developing that relationship.
So would you correct on a remote collar if you saw a behavior you did not like?
You have to define what a behavior I don't like is, right? To me, a behavior that I don't like is like he's trying to attack the other dog, right?
What if you see him tense up, ears back?
That's what I mean about that stuff. You have to allow them to kind of work through a little bit and see what it becomes, right? Because in a lot of dogs' cases, right, in that podcast or whatever I had you listen to, right, those 2 dogs were very tense with each other initially, right? And we had to allow them to kind of figure that out, right? And size each other up a little bit and stuff like that. And Vinny, when he meets, we're talking about meeting pushy dogs, Vinny turns into like a freaking like coyote, like when he's remember when he met Fizz and Fizz was being like really annoying towards him? Fizz is her dog. And Vinny like full hackles, like neck to butt, like he looks like a freaking coyote, like it's terrifying, right? Like, and like he'll sit there and just, you know, it's like what he looks like, right?
Hated it though.
Yeah, right. But like
a little.
But like that's kind of like what he does. And again, I'm not gonna. You guys do your thing, but I'm here to stop it if it turns into a problem. Right?
So you would literally like wait till it turned into a fight?
In a lot of cases, yeah, but that also there's a lot of variables to this, right? Because I also know the dogs that I'm socializing my dogs with, right? And I only put certain dogs with certain types of dogs, you know what I mean? So like in Patch's case, like going through like the way I would label dogs, Patch is what I would consider a supervised social dog, right? He's not 100%, there's never gonna be a problem with him, he's just good to go, right? But he's also not like he's gonna just like unpredictably go off on another dog, right? In the wrong situation, right, if the right recipe of things happen, there's a potential that he would get into an altercation with another dog, right? So typically speaking, I don't socialize, or I should say I don't use supervised social dogs to test dogs. You know what I mean? Because I need to know what the other dog is going to do, right? And if I don't know what he's going to do in the right situation, right, and I don't know what the other dog is going to do in the right situation, it's like I just got to be prepared for both of them, you know, and that's stressful, right? So that's where you get into, we talked about with fostering and stuff like that. It's not that he can't interact with the fosters, but he's a bad dog to use as the test dog for fosters, right?
And I feel like the dog sensed that too, because like when she came in, she did not like him. She was growling at him from the get-go.
Sure.
My friend brought his puppy over. She was play bowing and trying to play with him.
Yeah, you know, so I would be looking for really, really social dogs to get him around right now. You know, get him play dates with like really, really social dogs, you know, where you could have your attention on him and not need to worry about what the other dog is doing. Because that allows me to, going back to the question you answered, which sparked that conversation, which is, well, do you just wait until a fight happens? It's like, well, if I know that the only dog out of this group that I need to be concerned about is him, I could sit there laser focused on him the whole time they're socializing and wait until the moment he does decide this is a fight now and intervene immediately and make sure something doesn't happen.
So how do you intervene?
You got to know your dog. I mean, in his case, he's sensitive enough to the e-collar where as soon as it happened, no, boom, right? I would give a correction, right? In other dogs' cases, whatever. You just have to figure out what they're motivated by.